I wanted to be a revolutionary more than a journalist. I was kind of an unusual child, and I read the works of Alexander Berkman and Emma Goldman, a couple of the early anarchist revolutionaries in the early 20th century. But I was interested in writing, and I determined that journalism would be the best manner by which to bring changes about. Later I realized I was wrong, and that journalism only goes so far, and that's why I became a journalist.
Battles in the press elevated citizen journalists from all sides to center stage in the political sphere.
That Barack Obama met a bunch of silver ponytails back in the 1980s, like Bill and Bernadine Dorn.
That there is no one left. But the FBI does not agree, although agents have given up intense hunts for the radicals.
Mr. Ayers is not involved in my campaign. He has never been involved in this campaign, and he will not advise me in the White House.
I knew Barack Obama, absolutely, and I knew him probably as well as thousands of other Chicagoans. And like millions and millions of other people worldwide, I wish I knew him better right now.
But thousands of people were not asked to help start his political career in their home.
They had real money from real capitalists who gave it on to their children and their children's children, and then they become communists. Barack Obama is a radical. We should not be afraid to say that.
The same new media that he'd helped create spread fake news lies about his death. Andrew Breitbart had a congenital heart condition. He'd been in the hospital a year before for the heart condition. I knew about it. A number of people knew about it. Sean Hannity knew about it and talked about it after Andrew's death. I talked to Andrew 3 hours before he died. One of the things he said to me in that phone call was that he'd had a heart pang on a plane the night before. He didn't know what it was at the time, and I didn't know what it was at the time. What he said was, he said, I was on a plane last night, and I felt something weird in my heart. He said, I think it's all the arrows I take getting attacked for people. That was one of the last things he said to me.
Of course, alternative and mainstream media are both just as guilty of yellow journalism. So it can be impossible to get the whole truth from anywhere. Where's the line between speculation and manipulation? Sometimes questions are valid. Sometimes they're not. There's people that believe censoring is the only way to prevent someone from influencing the public with false information. But doing that limits our ability to prevent the corruption of those that have the power to silence others. Mistakes are often the result of great intentions. No argument there. But I'd say it's kind of hard to prove intentions. Some theories circulating on the internet are easy to disprove, while others raise major questions.
You know, it's this paranoid tendency psychologically that we have. When we don't have the answers, we make up stories. That's suspicion, that's paranoia. So, you know, the one thing that we can do for ourselves is to be able to hold space for the fact that the people we put into power are humans, right? They're humans just like us. Somehow, you know, with power, we assume comes this God complex, right? But what is that about? That's not rational. They're still human, and we need to hold space for the fact that they're going to act in human ways, which also means making mistakes.
We all need to ask questions. But what are we supposed to do when asking gets us in trouble? Would a government official really use their powers to go after a journalist?
We have the Pentagon spokesperson, which General McChrystal was, at the time of the invasion of Iraq, telling me we totally co-opted the media on that one.
Hastings wrote the Rolling Stone article with General Stanley McChrystal's remarks about the Afghanistan war.
I think it's clear that the article in which he and his team appeared showed poor judgment.
Soon after its release, President Obama was accepting General McChrystal's resignation. Now, I can imagine Hastings was hated for his work, but he was protected by the First Amendment.
The question is, have we learned from that? And sadly, I don't know if we have.
WikiLeaks says Michael Hastings contacted WikiLeaks lawyer Jennifer Robinson just a few hours before he died.
He was seen looking under his car with his brother.
It's hard to ignore these interviews with Joe Biggs. He seemed genuinely concerned with the events surrounding Hastings' death, and his message sounded sincere, so we explored the possibility of foul play.
You know how people are going to react to this. They're going to say the tinfoil hat people think the government killed this journalist by taking over his car, doing something to his car, and the other people are going to say, so there are people who are going to say that's nuts. Your thoughts?
But like I said, he's not someone that would be driving around erratically like that in the middle of the night. That just wasn't how he was. So that just leaves a lot of questions and a lot of digging that need to be brought up and answered. I'm not going to speculate and say I think anything, because that's just going to make me look crazy.
The Obama administration has clearly declared war on the press. It's declared war on investigative journalists, our sources. I think the only recourse to this kind of behavior by the government is to say back to the government, we declare war on you.
What was Hastings investigating before he died that would lead people to think he was murdered?
Do you subscribe to any of this? Do you have any idea really what may have happened?
You know, I have no doubt that he was pursuing a hot story. He always had at least 5 hot stories going. That was Michael. So, and he also, there will be published his profile of John Brennan in an upcoming issue of Rolling Stone, probably in a couple of weeks.
Because no one else is going to defend the press.
The theories around Hastings' car accident had us following crumbs that led us to dozens of stories of activists exposing the wrongdoings of companies like Stratfor. For those who don't know, Stratfor is a private intelligence company that some are calling a shadow CIA. I didn't know. I didn't think I needed to know until now.
A professor of philosophy at Northwestern University has been tracking the case of Barrett Brown and wrote a Nation piece about him, the strange case of Barrett Brown.
Democracy Now! Was one of the few news outlets that covered the fallout of the Stratfor hacks.
So the FBI raids his home, and he ultimately is arrested. He faces 100 years in prison.
Yeah, if you add up all the charges, and if he serves them sequentially, it'll be 105 years in prison. Yeah, that's right.
The first grand jury sort of secret search warrants for my online communications were requested very shortly after we had revealed the DOJ's involvement in the Team Themis scandal with H.B. Gary and these other firms. Over time, you know, we knew, all of us knew that we were being monitored in different ways, and that we were being pursued.
Thanks to another fucking stroke of luck, thank God, that H.B. Gary, since mid-February, had hired an FBI informant who was already an FBI informant, already had been bitching to the FBI about this other nonsense about Greg Hausch for fucking years. A paid FBI informant who the FBI purchased supplies for, or paid, gave some money to buy supplies because she was so helpful to them in making shit up and thinking up reasons to raid Barrett Brown and get his information they wanted for other reasons. That she was in the employ of fucking H.B. Gary and working straight with Greg Hoagland, the fucking CEO, who's already been caught last year.
There were hacks against our infrastructure. There was weird disinformation campaigns, that kind of thing. Later on, we found out from the Snowden emails that the GCHQ, one of Britain's intelligence services, had a nice big file of ideas on how they could go after Anonymous in different ways. And some of those stratagems laid out there kind of coincided with some of the stuff that had happened to me, certain kinds of phone attacks, for instance. And later on, the FBI, as they pursued me.
We don't play all our hands like they do. Anyway, so that's why Robert Smith's life is over. So when I say his life is over, I don't say I'm going to go kill him. But I'm going to ruin his life and look into his fucking kids. Because Aaron Barr did the same thing. And he didn't get rated for it. How you like them apples?
They put out a search warrant for my house and for my mother's house as well. And served that search warrant. And the search warrant listed for subjects of inquiry H.B. Gary, the same company we had exposed, In-Game Systems, another company that had been involved in that we had exposed and which had later been found to have dealt in 0 days, controlling, for instance, airports in France for potential customers. And our website, echelon2.org, on which we compiled our information, and Project PM, the group that I was using to conduct this crowdsourced research. There was no mention of Stratfor. But months later, when they had already arrested me for threatening a federal agent.
Oh, is Barrett getting fucking raided by the FBI? Holy shit!
And they still needed something to justify the investigation. They listed my involvement in the Stratfor hack, which of course I hadn't actually hacked, not being a hacker. Those are the charges I was actually dealt. And so many of those charges eventually were dropped by the government because they were nonsense. But this was enough to kind of show even to the New York Times, even to sort of slow on the uptake outlets, that something was wrong here, that my entire prosecution had been retaliation for our work in exposing the DOJ's own practices.
Stories like Barrett's definitely contribute to the rising number of activists butting heads with intelligence officials. What's going to happen when everyone loses faith?